Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker. With me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And in today's episode, we are previewing the Styrian Grand Prix from the Red Bull Ring for, I believe, round number 8 of the F1 season, back-to-back. And then we're going once again with another back-to-back here at the Red Bull Ring next week. So 3 weeks in a row for F1, basically unprecedented on that side of things. So really cool that we're getting a lot of F1 action during the most intriguing championship battle we've had in many, many years. So looking forward to breaking this one down. We have a couple of news and notes to get to in today's episode. And then, of course, we'll give you our fantasy lineups for the weekend, of course, our turbo drivers, and then our predictions for the race as a whole, because remember, this race kind of led off F1 last season when it came back from the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's kind of a banger, a nice return, heartwarming return. It was a real banger. Lando Norris getting his first F1 podium in this race last season. So love to see it. Looking forward to this race weekend. Potential of rain in the cards as well for both qualifying and the race on Sunday. So lots of things up in the air for this Grand Prix this weekend. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing good. Very, very excited for this weekend. Not only do we have F1 at a really fun track, that was an absolute fantastic race last year. We also have the W Series coming back for the first time in a couple of years. So really excited.
TSN too.
Yes, exactly. So really excited to see that championship back. It was unfortunate that they weren't able to get that championship last year, but really excited for that one coming up this year. A lot of really fun names in that series, some cool new liveries with some different stuff that they're trying out this year as well in preparation for a team championship going into next season. So excited to see the W Series at even a better time as well. It's a little bit later than the F1 stuff, so it's even more consumable for us over in North America, but definitely excited for this entire weekend.
Absolutely. Let's get into the news and notes, shall we? I feel like this has kind of been on repeat. The Turkish Grand Prix is back on the calendar. So after, coming back on for the Canadian Grand Prix, then of COVID-19 travel restrictions from the UK and everything, they kind of took it off the calendar, hence the doubleheader here for the Austria kind of circuit here for the Red Bull Ring. So that's kind of why we have that this weekend. But Singapore is no longer on the calendar, leaving a vacant spot for the Turkish Grand Prix to reemerge as an option for that spot. It was kind of rumored maybe they would do 2 U.S. Grand Prix weekends because of the U.S. Grand Prix the weekend after the Singapore race or 2 weeks after, so that maybe they could have worked something out schedule-wise, going to either COTA or maybe even Indianapolis for 2 weeks in the States. But that is no longer going to be an option for them, as they've signed with Turkey once again, a track that obviously was great last season, had a lot of incidents, had a lot of thrills and spills in the wet, and provided one of the, or arguably the best F1 race of the season last year. There were so many to choose from really last year that you could have a bunch to pick from, but it's definitely a welcome addition back to the calendar. Hopefully it's kind of here to stay. I'm curious to see what kind of happens this season. I'm a bit hesitant in some regards to see it after the pavement's actually cured this time, but it's nice to see that it is back on the calendar. They're getting a shot a little bit later on. It's after the Russian Grand Prix, going to take place October 1st to the 3rd weekend. So right in that spot where Singapore was. So your thoughts, Kyle? I mean, I've asked you your thoughts on the Turkish Grand Prix coming back on the calendar before, but once again, kind of it's a new spot here taking the place of Singapore.
Yeah. I obviously would have loved to see like Indy or something like that on the schedule, or like maybe somehow get Canada back in. Yeah, exactly. So that would have been the first choice, but honestly, Turkey, it's a great circuit. It makes more sense logistically to stick it in there, even though it is still a weird kind of triple header. I think it's something like Russia to Turkey to Japan or something like that is like the triple header. So I could be mistaken on the exact logistics of that, but I know that it is in a triple header there. So it's going to be difficult there. But it's a great circuit, was a great track last year. As you mentioned, I'm interested to see how the circuit kind of goes when it's not just like a freshly paved kind of circus.
Driving cars out at 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's a really fun circuit, was a great race last year. And again, I'd rather see a replacement circuit than no race at all. And Turkey is absolutely one of the best replacement tracks that you could have had, and probably should have been on the schedule regardless. So really fun and excited that we're able to get that back on the schedule when we originally weren't looking like we were going to have it.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement there. Looking forward to that's kind of like the last European race of the season as well. So that's going to end the European stint, and looking forward to seeing the Turkish Grand Prix back on the calendar again this season. But yeah, looking forward to it. And then we look to the end of the season finale in Abu Dhabi. The Yas Marina circuit is undergoing some kind of major renovation changes to kind of spice up the racing product there, which is desperately needed. If you have not watched an Abu Dhabi race, congratulations, because you've saved yourself some time. It's been really tough to watch sometimes, overtaking. Plus, the championship battle doesn't usually come down to that final race of the season, so there's not much on the line apart from the 2016 one with Hamilton and Rosberg, of course. That was very entertaining, but you couldn't really make a pass in a lot of the different sectors because of the way it's configured. They're making some huge changes to the places where it's been difficult to pass in the past. So they're changing, like after the second straight, the double kind of chicane there. They're changing that into kind of just a longer curve, and they're making it more track friendly and more driver friendly for the potential for momentum overtakes and everything like that. So props to Yas Marina and everybody there that are taking this initiative to realize that there was a problem with the racing product, and they've heard from the fans and from the drivers and everything like that, from the teams, that the change needed to be made, and they're making that change, and that will be swiftly done before the end of the season come late November. So looking forward to seeing how Abu Dhabi kind of fares on this new configuration. What are your thoughts on the project, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, it took them, like 12 years or however long it's been there. But you know what? At least they're cognizant of the fact that the racing product isn't good enough there, especially to be the championship finale.
This season, you never know. Like, we can see it go down to the wire, right?
Exactly. So I think the big criticism that a lot of people have had, obviously the circuit itself, but the main thing is the fact that they have so much money there and they've refused to kind of do anything to the track to make it better. Remains to be seen kind of what we actually get from it. But hopefully it makes things better, more passing opportunities, a couple of heartbreaking zones there. So you would assume that would be better for on-track passing and everything like that. But we'll see basically what we get when we get there to the end of the season. And hopefully it's some positive changes, because really I don't see how you can make it worse. Just like, come on, like they can't make it worse, right?
I'll give you credit on that. You just went straight for the point. It's a correct
I thought
point.
about sugarcoating it, but I was like, nah, it's Yas Marina.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a very accurate way to describe how we all feel about that race. But Turkish Grand Prix, a welcome kind of piece of news for this week that we're really looking forward to getting onto the latter stage of this championship battle that hopefully goes season long between Hamilton and Verstappen. Looks very even so far this weekend. But on his teammate there, that being of Lewis Hamilton's Valtteri Bottas, he's been assessed a 3-place grid penalty for not being able to leave his garage stall. Oh boy, just give me a lot of ammo here, Valtteri Bottas, but I won't go into him too much. So he's going to have a 3-place grid penalty. Seemed a little bit off the pace already via practice times compared to Hamilton as well, so that's not going to do him any favors. If you hadn't seen the clip, he was trying to leave his pit stall or the garage and into the pit lane to try and heat his rear tires up, and he just overcooked it and spun it. And luckily nobody was hurt. No, he didn't hit anything, just kind of spun it around. No harm done. But for reckless driving, they've kind of given him a 3-place grid penalty, which is deserved at the end of the day. That's uncharacteristic of Valtteri Bottas to do something like that. So maybe the pressure's getting to him a little bit, or just he overthought it or wasn't even thinking at all of what he was doing. But unfortunate there for that could be a potentially big thing in the Constructors' Championship as well. Mercedes don't need anything like that. They're already at a deficit enough already.
And look like they're behind Red Bull again this weekend.
When you look at the two cars of Perez and Verstappen, compared to Bottas and Hamilton's pace, Red Bull seemed to be the fastest constructor there this weekend. So Valtteri Bottas, Kyle, kind of a head scratcher. Yeah.
Obviously, it's not the easiest thing to try and do that move or anything like that, but like it's just something you can't have happen, right? And that's why it's deserving of a 3-place penalty, 2 penalty points on the license, all this kind of stuff. Like it's exactly the right decision, because you just can't have that kind of stuff happen with people standing that close by. Good car control by Bottas to not hit anybody or anything like that, but can't be in that situation in the first place. So tough result there. It's not like it's the first time we've seen anybody spin out trying to cook up those rear tires. Just think back to when old George Russell at Imola, which is kind of funny thinking about the two drivers going for that Mercedes seat, or two drivers that have kind of most notably made that mistake in recent years. It kind of a couple examples this weekend of how tough Formula One cars are to drive. That one, of course, Robert Kubica, who is back in FP1, which is, for starters, awesome to see because I'm a huge Kubica fan, spun out on like his opening lap there. So a couple of mistakes early on in the sessions, but a big one there for Bottas, especially when you consider the championship implications. Because you assume at this point that Red Bull is going to outqualify them, at least one of those cars is. You assume Lewis Hamilton's going to outqualify him. So you assume for Bottas, you're looking at like optimally third qualifying, which means starting sixth now. So like there's going to be even then might even be lower. Honestly. So a tough bounce for what Mercedes needed to be a big weekend here. And it's definitely going to hurt them there because they needed Bottas to be up there to try and have a shot at the Red Bulls by the looks of things this weekend.
Makes the strategy up.
Exactly. And it doesn't look like it's going to be able to do that with the penalty here. So a big turn of events here for a fairly a kind of pointless part of the weekend.
Yeah, it doesn't help that Drive to Survive is following them this weekend either. So
are they? Oh man! Oh no, Valtteri. Yeah.
So gonna be a nice interview moment. That what happened out there? I just kind of effed up really, but that's a tough look on Bottas when the cameras are on him, the spotlight's on him, and hopefully that does make the cut at the end of the day for next season. Because I mean, the way the narrative's kind of going here, it seems more and more likely every race weekend that Valtteri Bottas is honestly going to be in that seat next season with the options they have available to them. But we'll see what happens. You don't want to jump to conclusions or anything like that. Just a tough look on the Finnish driver there. But that's all the news and notes, really, Kyle.
Not too much.
It's F1 news is kind of an interesting one. They're not too much week to week, really, but it's just nice to point these little things out. Yeah, it comes thick and fast
once we get to that summer break. That's when all like the silly season stuff happens.
Yep, for sure. Let's look at the fantasy picks here for the Styrian Grand Prix. Of course, it's in Austria. The Austrian Grand Prix is just in the Styrian Mountains, so they're going to have to call it something different because you can't have back-to-back races having the same name. But Styrian Grand Prix it is, and we both had a decent weekend for the French Grand Prix last weekend. Esteban Ocon was kind of our biggest miss because of how poor he kind of resulted with the race pace.
So that was a tough one there with -2 points. But you finished with 177. I finished with 161. Overall, pretty decent weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into it because let's look at what we haven't changed from race weekend to race weekend. First, I mean, we're basically on repeat a lot on this kind of portion of the show with Max Verstappen. And his value is honestly really insane right now. When you look at what Lewis Hamilton is, I'm surprised it hasn't shot up more. But at the same time, like the people who started this fantasy at the beginning of the season with his numbers compared to Hamilton, I don't even think we're expecting Verstappen to be this good this early on in the season. And the kind of the price point is showing it. They can only bump up his price so much without making everybody's total value and budgets absurd. So they're taking it slower, step by step, race by week. And I think that gap will continue to close as Verstappen seems to have a really good car under him again for probably back-to-back weekends here at the Red Bull Ring. Hence probably Red Bull doing a very good job at the tracks kind of named after them. So Max Verstappen actually kind of DNF'd in this race last season. And the first one had mechanical trouble. So that was unfortunate for him. And and that was kind of, from that point on, his season was spectacular, finishing on the podium basically every single weekend, it seemed. But that race was a bit of a sour start to his 2020 campaign. Seems like he's done well here in the past. Obviously, a race winner here back in 2019 as well. So he's had success at the two-time winner here. And he's done very well at this track in the past. Seems to be to his liking, has led both practice sessions so far at the time that we're recording this. So we'll see if he can have a perfect weekend here, because that's exactly what Verstappen would need to make a statement here this weekend. I don't know what your thoughts on Verstappen are, but I'm sure they're pretty positive. Yeah,
love him this weekend. Two-time winner here in Styria. I guess you have to say, you can't say Austria this weekend. We can say that next weekend. But it's the home track for Red Bull. It's the Red Bull Ring. It's just all like checking it off this weekend. And they had a tough opening couple of races last year in Styria. With obviously the electronics issue for Verstappen, Albon looking like he could go out and even win the race, not just finish on the podium, and ends up wrecking out and all this kind of stuff. So I'm expecting a bounce back for Red Bull at their home track, and absolutely led by Max Verstappen. 2 wins, 4 podiums, and 7 starts on the circuit. He's just been nothing short of remarkable in the past at this circuit. So expecting that to absolutely continue this weekend, unless something kind of like what we saw last year happens, where there's an electronics issue or an engine issue, because that really seems like it's the only thing that's going to stop Max Verstappen this weekend.
Definitely. Complete agreement. Like, this guy's otherworldly right now. He's really clicking things off one after the next. But next, Lando Norris is the guy that we have probably not changed from week to week here. First podium, of course, came last season in this kind of race. It was the Austrian Grand Prix, the first one last year, instead of the Styrian Grand Prix. So they've kind of switched it around this year to keep it spicy, I guess. But for Lando Norris, this is a track that he's done very, very well at. And McLaren as a whole have done very, very well at in their kind of stint here since they've kind of reemerged as a top tier constructor in that kind of 3rd to 5th range over the past 3 seasons. So really looking forward to seeing what Lando Norris can do this week. And the expectations, I think, are very high on him this weekend. Daniel Ricciardo seems to be doing much better this weekend so far through the timing sheet. So he's going to have a little bit of pressure from his teammate for one of the few times so far this season, but I think he'll rise up to the challenge. Still at a very nice price point with 14 million, an absolute steal when you look at the guys that are ahead of him. And he has the 3rd most points out of anybody so far in fantasy this season. So Lando Norris, no brainer to keep him in your lineup.
Yep, and he's still only 14 million. It's nuts. 3 points finishes in 3 races at the Red Bull Ring. A podium in there, of course, his first career one. Finishes of 5th, 3rd, and 6th so far in his career at this track.
Remember that last lap last year when he had like 2 overtakes, right? Like everything was crazy in that second one.
He's been awesome at this circuit, and some good qualifying efforts as well. 5th and 3rd with a 9th in there as well. Most recent time there. So Lando Norris, big fan of him this weekend. The McLarens look pretty solid. Fairly even, it looks like, on pace with the Ferraris, if not maybe having the advantage this weekend. So a big fan of McLaren in general this weekend, but especially Lando.
Yeah, for sure. I honestly don't remember what you have from week to week, to be honest.
No driver changes.
No driver changes for yourself this weekend. You lead us off with your next one, then your highest point guy.
So highest valued guy I've got in the lineup still is Sergio Perez, and I've still got him as my turbo driver as well. Nothing too crazy at the Red Bull Ring here. 6 points finishes in 8 starts, no podiums so far in his career at the circuit, but he's been a very consistent finisher. 2 6th place finishes last year at the Red Bull Ring for Racing Point in the pink Mercedes. Expecting a very strong weekend for him again. The teamwork last weekend was exceptional to let Verstappen by, and then the let's go get him. Like, that was awesome to hear. And they obviously went out and got them. So I'm expecting a big weekend for the home track for Red Bull in general. And that's why I've still got Sergio Perez in my lineup and as my turbo driver.
I do have Sergio Perez making a reappearance into my lineup this weekend, just based off of Red Bull's pace. He just seems like a really great option for me right now. I think I'm going to stick with my turbo on Lando Norris this weekend. I just really like the kid this weekend. I'm not 100% sure on Perez. He's been a little bit off of Verstappen on some of the practice runs so far. So I don't know if I'm going to get full max value out of him. I think race pace could be up there, but Lando Norris seems to be pretty solid right now. So until that kind of dissipates, I'm going to stick with the British driver. But I do have Sergio Perez in my lineup this week, and I took him out last week, I think, to make way for Esteban Ocon, so I could put the Red Bull in as my constructor, but that's going to be switched around this weekend as I'm going with more of a heavier hitter lineup with the driver side of things, and Sergio Perez fits the bill there. Seems to be clicking on all cylinders right now. Has turned his season around for Red Bull after a bit of a slow start, which you expected. Everybody takes a little bit of time to get acclimated to their new car, and I'm very impressed. It's exactly what I thought was going to happen when we did our preseason stuff. Red Bull taking a little bit of time with Perez to come around, but the way that they've been able to split the strategy on the Mercedes has been very pleasantly surprised, and I'm glad that they've taken advantage of that, because that's been the real strength of the Mercedes the last couple of years, when Verstappen's kind of been a very close, if not better car than them on race weekends. They've been able to split the strategy between Bottas and Hamilton that kind of dissipates Verstappen's advantage over them. But now Red Bull's kind of flipping the script on them this time around, with having probably two more competitive cars than Hamilton and Bottas, with Bottas being a bit more off the pace. So looking forward to see what Sergio Perez can do this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another strong Red Bull weekend. We saw them kind of outperform Mercedes at Paul Ricard, which we expected to be a Mercedes circuit. Of the kind of Grand Prix circuits that are on the schedule, Red Bull Ring has historically been Red Bull's best, which you would kind of expect as their home track. And it looks like that's going to be the case again this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. For the next selection, you lead us off with another one here, Kyle. What do you got for your next highest paid guy?
I'll go with the next highest one, and it's somebody that I actually don't love as much this weekend. Actually, my fifth highest paid guy I feel better about this weekend, but I got to keep the Ferrari contingency in there just because of the pace of that car, and that's Carlos Sainz Jr. Hasn't been amazing at the Red Bull Ring in his career. 4 points finishes in 7 races. Was decent here last year with a 5th place and a 9th place finish, but overall consistent driver. Had some struggles earlier in his career at the Red Bull Ring, figured it out the last 3 races with 3 straight points finishes here. And the Ferrari doesn't look as good as it's been in recent weeks. They had a really tough Paul Ricard race as well, after looking pretty solid in some FP1 and FP2 times. But Sainz at 14.5 mil, I really don't see any other candidates in that range that makes more sense than him. So I'm going to keep him in the lineup.
I have taken Carlos Sainz out of my lineup this weekend.
Interested to see where you go for this one.
Yeah, it was a tough decision, because I've really liked the value Carlos kind of brings week to week. I can't quite fit Charles Leclerc in my lineup every weekend, and Sainz is a nice 1B to his 1A. So this is the first time in many, many weeks I have Sainz out of my lineup, but I'm spicing things up a little bit here, going a bit different, going a bit spicy, if you want to say. But I'll save my last kind of change for the driver's side of things for my last one. I've got a guy that's staying in my lineup who's been a constant basically this entire season. It's Pierre Gasly. He didn't take part in FP2 after having some sort of mechanical problem, but in FP1, second fastest on the board. So AlphaTauri seems like they have decent pace this weekend. I think that second place is a bit flattering, but obviously I think a top 10 is a little bit on the cards, I would say. An 8 to 11th finish probably for Pierre Gasly is pretty realistic around here. And I'll check where he finished here last year. I have it pulled up. He had some problems. So he finished 15th in the Austrian or the Styrian Grand Prix.
In the other one, though, he finished 7th.
Yeah, so not bad by any means there for Pierre Gasly. I think probably around that area is realistic for him again this weekend based off of the FP1 speed. I don't think they'll lose it all, but there's been some pleasant surprises so far in the practice sessions in Alpine, namely, but after seeing what happened with the French Grand Prix last weekend where they were so strong in practice, I think that race pace is definitely off as some of these top constructors. So I like Pierre Gasly. He's been consistent this entire season for me. Great value for, in my opinion, on what he brings to the table. Slowly but steadily increases value, which has helped my overall value to my team. And I think he'll be a decent addition to, or just a nice keep for my lineup again.
Yeah, he's always in the conversation for myself, but just with the budget, I just can't quite fit him in. I could have switched away from Sainz and gone with something like that, but I still have more confidence in the Ferrari there, even though their results have been somewhat similar in their careers to this point. But I'll get to the last guy in my lineup here in terms of the drivers, and that's somebody that I feel very, very strong about this weekend, and that's Esteban Ocon. Last year came back to Formula One after a year off with Renault, and had a pretty solid opening weekend. All things considered, didn't have the greatest qualifying effort in that first race, but made his way up the field when everybody else, it seemed, DNF'd in that race to finish 8th. But the big thing for me is in the wet, He went out and qualified 5th that next weekend and then had the overheating issue. So he didn't get the finish that he ultimately deserved. But in his career so far, Esteban Ocon, prior to that overheating issue, had finished in the points in each of the races at the Red Bull Ring, 2 8th place finishes and a 6th place finish. There's the potential for rain this weekend. We've seen Esteban Ocon be very strong in the circuit in the rain and just kind of in the rain in general. The Alpines look very strong this weekend as well, up there in FP2 for Esteban Ocon. So I'm feeling like it's going to be a really solid weekend for Esteban Ocon here.
Yeah, I've not gone with Esteban Ocon for my last guy.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that.
I'm not as confident in this guy as you are. I mean, I think he's a great driver and all. But when I look at the points that he brings to the table each week in fantasy, it's nowhere near what I could potentially get elsewhere with some other guys. And that's the reasoning for it. And I have the budget to play with, which has been really nice for me to have that flexibility. And in his place, I don't know how I'm able to squeak this in, because when I started this at the beginning of the season, I kind of fiddled around with this kind of lineup and I was nowhere near this. But this extra 4.5 million that I've earned over the past 7 races.
You're up to 4.5?
104.5. Yeah.
Holy, I'm at 102.6.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, there it is. Jeez.
It's pretty nuts. And I've been able to fit in a guy that just finished second in FP2, Daniel Ricciardo. I'm taking a bit of a risk on it. You know, I've got some pretty high pricey guys in here, but it's consistency across the board for me that brings it in. I could have just stuck with Carlos Sainz and just, had no budget. But now my budget is at 0 flat. Like I've used up all the money that I have. It's a perfect combination. What I have left, it just squeaked in for me. Luckily, he's got 108 points, which is actually pretty decent amongst the drivers. It's above Carlos Sainz in terms of points only by 5, but you have to think Ricciardo was struggling at the beginning of the season, so that those points have really accumulated over the past couple of weekends. And I think he's kind of turning the corner a little bit with that McLaren. And I think this would be a great weekend for him to maybe get some extra money. And maybe this is just a one-off play, but the McLaren has always run well around here at the Red Bull Ring. In order for me to fit this constructor in that I wanted to, I had to take the Red Bull out to put Daniel Ricciardo in. I think there's value in some of these bigger name drivers here this weekend in the wet. Specifically, I think experience will pay off. And if that comes to fruition, Daniel Ricciardo has boatloads of experience. So I like this play, and play. going a bit spicy with Danny.
I like that play. I thought about it, but I couldn't fit it in for Carlos Sainz. I was 500K short on the budget there. So props to you for being able to fit it in, just not quite for myself. And that's one of the disadvantages of the slow start that I had. Don't quite have that same budget that you do, and it's paying off big dividends.
Exactly. At least one thing for fantasy is going right for me right now. And, we'll see what happens here for the Styrian Grand Prix.
Technically, I still have the lead. You got to play that Mega Driver.
Hungry, baby. Hungry.
Until it goes horribly wrong.
After what they've done at the Euros, I think I feel pretty confident in what Hungary can bring to the table for me. But constructors, last part of it for fantasy. I'm changing. You're changing. This is your only change of the weekend. Let's tell us all about it.
Yeah, I switched back to Ferrari after going to McLaren 3 weeks ago, whatever it is now. Switched to Ferrari, didn't pay off. They had a tough race day where they dropped back from some decent qualifying positions. Really, really screwed me out of some points. Actually finished with -2 points there for Ferrari. So shout out to them. So for that, switching back to McLaren here. Feel good about their pace this weekend. Feel good about Lando Norris's chances of taking advantage of any midfield mistakes or any mistakes at the top end of the grid to go out, potentially sneak away a podium or something like that. He's been very strong at the circuit. Feel good about Daniel Ricciardo on the circuit as well. The big thing for him has been the McLaren brakes, and on a circuit like this with runoff, all that kind of stuff, he can really push it. So I feel good about him this weekend as well. So McLaren going to be the constructor play for myself this weekend.
Alrighty. I'm going with McLaren as well. I'm taking Red Bull out.
Wow. Going all in on McLaren.
Yeah, I feel really, really good about them this weekend. And I wanted to take Red Bull out. I would have loved to have kept them in, but when I looked at the options, I was like, yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is probably going to be a better option than what Esteban Ocon for me is going to be this weekend if I get Red Bull in. So I really like the McLaren. I've never gone this aggressive with the strategy here with 2 Red Bulls. two McLarens, and then the McLaren as the constructor, spreading myself thin with the options, and then Pierre Gasly kind of drive. I've stuck very much close to the cards in terms of not going out so far with reaching construct everything like that. I like these guys this weekend, probably even next weekend too. We'll see what happens this weekend if I'm willing to make some changes or not. But I'm looking forward to this one. I think there's a lot of potential with Daniel Ricciardo here, and then McLaren as a whole. If McLaren does well, then that means Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris did well. So I'm taking the full Floge bet on those two. They've had great reliability so far this season, so hopefully I'm not jinxing them on that. Knock on wood. And then we'll see what happens here in the Styrian Mountains for the Styrian Grand Prix.
Yeah, it is looking like it's going to be a really fun one to see what Mercedes can do if they have anything for Red Bull this weekend, because it definitely looks like Red Bull has the advantage once again this weekend, but should be another fun midfield fight. We saw last year some really, really great stuff in the midfield. As you mentioned, the insane last lap with Lando Norris passing like 3 guys in that last lap. Like it was so much fun. So hoping for a lot of that this weekend and next weekend as well.
Oh my God. So I didn't confirm this lineup, and I just went to save it, and it says my budget exceeded. It was at 0, bounce. So something's changed here.
Yep. That's a tough bounce.
Who has lost value since I did this?
Well, it would have been somebody that you would have had to put in went up, I assume.
They all look pretty much the same as what I had. That is
well,
ridiculous.
if you were at 0, then it would be just like 0.1 would make a difference.
It's literally 0.1. I'm off. So I don't know who the heck increased
probably
value
Ricardo
since I did it. I've lost value. I'm not at 104.5. I'm at 104.4. So
did you still have
I'm gonna have to readjust my lineup now.
Did you still have Sainz in the lineup?
No. Well, no. So I can't use Daniel Ricciardo. I don't think here.
Well, no, I'm saying like who did you still have in your non-confirmed or like the lineup from last week or whatever before you confirmed it? Because Sainz went down 0.1.
Oh, I had Sainz, and then I had Ocon and Red Bull. So
yeah, so Sainz went down 1. So there it is.
But I did this morning and it didn't change. Like it was fine. So I think they've lost value since FP1, which is ridiculous.
That's how it updates. So
that's ridiculous. I should have saved
you're the one who didn't confirm it.
Wow. What a bummer. Oh my God.
That's a tough bounce.
Well, Carlos Sainz is coming in my lineup, and Daniel Ricciardo is out. That is a real bummer.
Tough bounce.
Wow.
That's why you always confirm it. Always got to save that lineup.
Things just can't get any worse for me, can they? My God, this is just like Chase Elliott getting disqualified here. This is brutal.
Hey, you know what? At least with this one, like it was in your own control. The Elliott one was just like dumb luck.
I should have saved it. Oh my God. Well, so I'm only making 2 changes. It's Carlos Sainz staying in, Daniel Ricciardo coming back out, and Sergio Perez comes in for Esteban Ocon. McLaren comes in for Red Bull. So I'm going to save that now and not be an idiot. What a bummer. I'm really upset about that. And if I go back up with the budget next week, then I'm going to be making that change. I'm going to put Ricardo in. But there you go, folks. That was great. Hey,
that's tough.
Awesome.
That's tough.
Because I refreshed the screen to save it, and they're like, error. I'm like, oh, I just probably have to refresh it now. I just lost my budget. So that's lovely. That's why I always wait to kind of do it, folks. But
that's why you don't wait to do it.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, I'm so flustered now. That's lovely. Okay.
All right.
Race picks.
Race picks. What order do we want to do this in here?
We'll go from 3 to 1.
We got to start with pole though. No.
Oh yeah, go with pole.
Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen. All right. Glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Podium.
Start best of the rest and then 3 to 1. Do we go 1 down to best of the rest? How do we want to do it?
Let's go best of the rest first.
Want to go down up?
Yes, down
Okay.
up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Best of the rest, because I feel like I know where you're gonna go. I'm gonna go a little bit bolder with it, and I'm gonna say Daniel Ricciardo goes out and gets best of the rest this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going with his teammate Lando Norris.
Lando Norris would have been my pick, but want to spice it up a little bit.
I'm glad that you used Daniel Ricciardo after I can't use him now. That's just lovely, hey. But yeah, I think Lando Norris is going to have a big weekend. Don't quite see him getting a podium, but I think he'll be in that mix. Probably maybe a fourth place finish could be on the cards with Bottas's penalty. We'll see if he can execute qualifying. I think there's expectation that Lando Norris could get the job done and get a solid finish such as that. Third place, you let us off with that one. I'll lead us off with this one. This is a tough one. This is really tough. Obviously I don't have Valtteri Bottas here. It's the three kind of that I'm looking at. I'll go with Sergio Perez here. I'll go with Sergio for third place. I think it's just a little bit too much for me to think Verstappen right now. And Perez just seems like he's on it. I don't know if he's quite there with Hamilton because he had his lap time deleted that was kind of faster than Verstappen in FP2. So there's potential here for another showdown between Verstappen and Hamilton. Perez is going to be a nice addition to that mix, but not quite there.
I'll go Lewis Hamilton. Finishes third here. I'm really believing in the Red Bull power this weekend. Home track, they've been really solid here in the past. Last year was a bit of a blip on the radar when you look at Max Verstappen winning this race in 2018 and 2019. They've got 2 weekends to take advantage of it this weekend, and I believe that they will. So I've got Lewis Hamilton finishing third step on the podium.
I'm interested to see what you got for your order here, but I'm going safe. Hamilton second. Verstappen wins the Styrian Grand Prix. It's going to be a nice showdown. I think there's a lot of competition. If it is in the wet, I'm curious to see who comes out on top between the two.
That changes things a lot for me. Hamilton, if it's in the wet, yeah, I think that we might see wet qualifying and then dry race. I think that's might how it go because it's 40% chance of rain each day of the weekend. Didn't get any today, which makes you think that probably you'll get some tomorrow and then maybe not on race day, but I would be very okay with a wet complete weekend. It's always fun and completely throws a wrench into everything.
Absolutely. I mean, these two are some of the best in the wet, if not the best in the wet. And the fact that they're the championship rivals is going to add a nice little bit of spice to this overall weekend. But that's my top two. What do you got for the Styrian Grand Prix?
I think Sergio Perez will be very strong this weekend, but we've seen him be a very good teammate so far. So even if he does show a fight, I don't think there'll be any dramatics or anything. Max Verstappen wins the Styrian Grand Prix, gets back on the top step in Austria for the first time in a couple of years, and he is joined by his teammate Sergio Perez on the second step.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Safety cars. Let's just throw this in there because we do tend to get some safety cars here for the Red Bull Ring. I think we had 4 in total last season. So all across the 2 races here. So what are you thinking here? Maybe 1.5 over under on the safety car here this weekend?
I'll take the under on that. I think we might get 1 potentially this weekend for the race day, but I'll take the under.
Okay. Might as well just take the over then because
also
if it's
remember,
in the wet, I think there's potential
if it's in the wet, geez, we might get 15. But remember last year it was the opening couple of weekends of the season, so there was a lot more things for people to work out, a lot of reliability issues, which is a lot of what we saw as well in the race when you look at the amount of retirements and where they came from and everything like that. For the Austrian Grand Prix, you had Max Verstappen electronics, Daniel Ricciardo overheating, Lance Stroll engine, Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean brakes, George Russell fuel pressure, and Kimi Räikkönen wheel. So all of those were kind of reliability issues. It wasn't necessarily one big crash. It was the second race with Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel where we got the collision. So I think we might still see one just with the way that things have gone this season. But I'm not expecting at least a Baku level kind of crazy or anything like that.
I think that's tough to live up to in the first place.
Exactly.
If it is.
Exactly.
But I think that'll do it for this Styrian Grand Prix preview. Really looking forward to this one. Austria always delivers for racing product here.
Short track as well.
Yeah, we're looking at almost a 1 minute lap time when it comes to qualifying speed. If it's in the dry, if it's in the wet, obviously they're not going to come close to that. But if it is in the dry, it is always a very interesting kind of circuit to really watch in qualifying, because it is such a tight margin between the front runners and the midfield, and how that battle for Q3 is really, really tight, as there's not
pull
too
time
many corners.
last year with Valtteri Bottas, funny enough, pull time last year in the dry was 1:02.939. So we'll be right around that 1 minute lap time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what these guys can do. If it's in the dry, even in the wet, it's going to be
honestly
awesome.
More so in the wet.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great weekend. Have we had a wet race so far this season?
Have we?
I don't even know. I don't think we have, honestly.
I don't think so. Let's see.
Bahrain.
Spain and Portugal was Imola wet for a little bit?
Yeah, it was wet at the beginting. Yeah. Okay, not a full wet race.
Portimao, Catalonia, Monaco, Baku, Paul Ricard. So no, it's been like we've had some wet weather tire, but we haven't had like a full, complete wet race yet.
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting storyline if it happens. So stay tuned for that. Let's wrap the show, shall we? Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We'd really appreciate it. Sorry for the fantasy blunder there. I was not expecting the save to really shake things up.
If you have the budget to do it, that's what you should do.
Exactly. I was just making a mock style thing. If you had that extra that 0.1 million that I initially had that I don't have anymore. But going to be a fun weekend nonetheless in the Styrian Mountains, the Red Bull Ring. Going to be a great weekend of racing there. And as well, be sure to check out the W Series this weekend, coming back for the first time since their inaugural campaign in 2019. Going to be a very fun championship. And it's at, if you're based in North America, it's at an even easier time to watch. It's after all the F1 stuff this weekend. So be sure to check that out on, I believe the race day is on Saturday after qualifying. So be sure to check that out. Yeah, TSN has got the coverage here in Canada. So major network showing its support for women's sports, which is always great to see. Looking forward to seeing that on the major channel. And I'll be working the NASCAR shift this weekend for TSN. So maybe I'll throw in a little bit of love to the W Series. Both races? I don't know my Sunday schedule yet. We'll see. But Saturday for sure. And we'll go from there. But thank you so much for watching today's episode. We really appreciate the support on the channel. It's been great recently. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. Enjoy the Styrian Grand Prix, everybody. It's going to be an amazing battle for round number 8, Hamilton versus Verstappen.